Some windows remain closed for years, not because they're locked, but because after enough time, we stop believing there's anything worth seeing outside. When we think about closed windows, we usually imagine something simple, a barrier, a piece of glass separating two different worlds, one inside, one outside. We assume that if the window stays closed, it's because something is preventing it from opening. Perhaps the weather, perhaps fear, perhaps someone else. That explanation feels comforting because it places the reason somewhere beyond our control. Most of us grow up believing that life works this way. Opportunities belong to people who are luckier. Confidence belongs to people who were born with it. Success belongs to those who had the right beginning. So we quietly accept the view from the room we're already standing in, not because we love it, but because it feels familiar. At first, we still look outside. We wonder what life might have been like somewhere else. Another city, another career, another version of ourselves. But each time we decide, maybe later, the window becomes just a little easier to ignore. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, almost without noticing. One day, we stop walking toward it. The dust grows thicker. The fingerprints remain. The outside world continues changing. Seasons arrive. Rain falls. Morning becomes evening. People come and go. And yet, inside the room, almost nothing changes. Not because life stopped moving, but because we stopped looking. The strange thing about a closed window is that after a while, you stop noticing that it's closed. It simply becomes part of the room, part of your routine, part of your life. And perhaps that's how limitations quietly begin, not as walls, but as habits. Think about the job you tell yourself you'll leave. Once the timing feels right, you don't hate it enough to walk away. You don't love it enough to stay. So another year passes. Nothing dramatic happens. Nothing changes. The window remains exactly where it has always been. Or perhaps it's a dream you've carried for years. A business, a book, a conversation, a place you've always wanted to see. Every now and then, you stand close enough to imagine it. You even place your hand on the frame, but imagination quietly replaces action until eventually the dream feels more familiar inside your mind than it ever could in reality. Relationships often become the same kind of room. People remain together, not because they're happy, but because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. The silence becomes ordinary. Distance becomes routine. And little by little, they stop wondering what life might feel like. If the window were open, sometimes it's money. You tell yourself, people like me don't build things. I wouldn't know where to begin. I've already missed my chance. Notice something. Those sentences don't describe the world. They describe the room. The world outside has never agreed with them. Only the voice inside has. The hardest part is this. Most of these decisions never feel like decisions. No one wakes up intending to make their life smaller. It happens one ordinary day at a time. One postponed opportunity, one avoided conversation, one familiar excuse, until the room begins to feel like the entire world. Look closely at the window. Nothing dramatic is happening. Your hand rests on the latch. The light is already waiting outside, and yet nothing moves. Perhaps this is what most of our lives look like. Not trapped, just paused. We often believe the hardest part is opening the window, but that isn't where the struggle begins. The real struggle begins much earlier. The moment we quietly decide that opening, it probably wouldn't change anything, that thought rarely arrives all at once. It grows slowly, one disappointment, one rejection, one failure, until hope begins to sound unrealistic and familiarity begins to sound wise. There is something interesting about windows. They don't create the world outside, they only allow you to see it. If you close one, the mountains don't disappear, the sky doesn't become smaller, the sunrise doesn't stop arriving, only your view changes. And yet, a smaller view has a strange way of becoming a smaller life. Perhaps that's why we blame circumstances. It's easier to believe the world became smaller than to admit our perspective did. Because if the world is responsible, there is nothing we can do. But if the window has been closed from the inside, then everything changes. Not because the answer becomes easy, but because possibility quietly returns. The window was never asking you to be fearless. It was never asking you to know exactly what waits beyond it. It was only asking one question. Are you willing to look again? Not to leap, not to prove anything, simply to look. Sometimes that is where every meaningful change begins. Many people spend years trying to find another door, another opportunity, another version of life. While standing in front of a window they stopped looking through long ago. Maybe the opportunity was never missing. Maybe their attention was. The window opens, only a few centimeters, not all the way, just enough for light to enter. Perhaps that's all change has ever needed, not certainty, only a small opening. We often imagine transformation as something dramatic, a new city, a new career, a completely different life. But most real change doesn't arrive like that. It begins so quietly that we almost mistake it for nothing. One honest conversation, one application you've been avoiding, one decision to stop waiting for permission, one moment of admitting that you've been standing in front of the same window for years. There is something deeply human about hesitation. Even after we recognize the truth, we rarely change immediately. Part of us still wants the familiar room, not because it makes us happy, but because it asks nothing new from us. The unknown has always carried two possibilities. It might disappoint you, or it might become the life you never allowed yourself to imagine. And perhaps that second possibility is the one we fear the most. Because if the world has been waiting all along, then we can no longer blame the window. Maybe that's why we leave windows closed. Not because they are difficult to open, but because an open window quietly asks, what will you do now? Once you see the horizon, you cannot pretend it isn't there. Once fresh air enters the room, you notice how long you've been breathing stale air. And once light reaches the places that were hidden, it's difficult to convince yourself that darkness was the only reality. The room hasn't changed. The window hasn't changed. The world outside hasn't changed. Only one small space now allows the two to meet. Perhaps that's how life changes too. Not all at once, not with certainty, but with one quiet decision that slowly lets the world back in. Maybe the world was never trying to keep you out. Maybe you were only trying to protect yourself, and perhaps you did that for so long. That protection slowly became a prison. The window never asked you to become someone else. It only waited for the moment you were willing to look outside one more time